Hey, what's up? Kalen here. Welcome to the Commerce Cast live stream. I'm here today with my good man, Allan MacGregor, previously at Demac, and he has some new adventures he's working on. Also a book author, I'm pretty sure, and done a lot of interesting stuff in the community for a long time. So I'm excited to get him on here. We're going to talk about all sorts of wild stuff, cannabis legalization, his journey, his tenure at Demac, what he's up to now. So, Allan, introduce yourself to the people.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Galen. First and foremost, and we're probably going to spend like half an hour on this, but it's Demac, not Demac. Like every time, man, every time. And yeah, so I just recently transitioned. This is my second week away from Demac after spending 8 years with the company, right? So for those that don't know who Demac is or what Demac does, Demac is an e-commerce agency based on Toronto in Canada. I was part of the company for 8 years. I went from where the small startup, like the developer shop that was about 10 people when I started, we were up to 90 plus when I left a couple of weeks ago. They probably hired a couple more people now. So it's been an interesting transition. Now I'm moving to a company called Browze, which is a marketplace direct to consumer. So I'm more on the merchant side now, jumping from the service industry. And yeah, and you mentioned the book. I don't know if at this point it's worthwhile to mention the book. Like that book is like 4 or 5 years old now. So it's a little bit out of date, right?
A little out of date. Awesome, man. So wait a second. When you started with Demac, there was 10 people, and now there's how many?
Yeah, so
Demac. Oh my gosh, Demac. Sorry.
Like as I said, we're gonna spend half an hour on this, man. Yeah, so like my first 2 years with Demac were actually contract work, right? I was freelancing from Eastern Canada, and I got to help them out in September 2010. I had the first couple emails back and forth with Matt, one of the co-founders of the company and the CEO. For building, I believe it was the first or second Magento store. At that point, we're talking 2008 would be 1.1.1.2.
Wow.
Right?
The first or second one that they did, or the first or second one in the universe?
No, they did.
Okay. I was about to get super impressed.
No.
Still impressed.
Yeah. So that's and then 2012 I moved to Toronto to work full time, and I had a number of positions with the company. And Kalen is dancing around.
I'm back. I had to turn the lights on. By the way, if I do weird stuff on my side, like stretching and stuff, they can only see you when you're talking. So
I know, but it's fun making.
I know. Got the lights on now. I'm sorry. So I'm focused. I'm back. I mean, I'm in the zone.
Yeah. So I mean, that has been pretty much it. Last position that I had at the company was director of engineering. So I had a team of 40 developers under me.
Holy cow! 40?
Yeah, like Demac has the Magento team, has the Shopify team, and we also work with a company called Workaria, which is sits kind
I've heard about that a few times.
Yeah, they're based from Philly. Really nice company, Ruby on Rails, and they're kind of the in between Shopify and Magento. So it's a single tenant SaaS. You still get to access to all the guts, so you can customize the hell out of it. Nice. But they take care of all the hosting and infrastructure for it as well. They have their own pretty solid development team. So it's a nice platform to have in the toolbox for clients.
That's really cool. By the way, quick shout outs to a couple of people in the live stream. Ben Roby, how you doing, brother? We got to get you on one of these soon. And Carrie Morrison. Ben says, I'm here only to watch Allan. So I don't know exactly what that means, but take it for what it is. So thanks you guys for joining. If you have any questions for Allan, particularly anything controversial, anything that'll keep him on his toes,
no.
Throw those in the chat. We'll be sure to ask him. And so yeah, man, that's well, I think you probably have a really interesting perspective on different platforms. You know, I've really just, messed around with Magento primarily. And really everybody's starting to get into Shopify a tiny bit one way or another. It's starting to eat up market share. A lot of people that were purely Magento are starting to look at it. And so, you probably have an interesting perspective on, like you were talking about work area, what makes it good, what makes it interesting, and kind of the pros and cons of different platforms.
Yeah, and it comes down to having the best tool for the job, right? Not every merchant is a good fit for Magento or for Shopify or for Workarea for that matter, right? Different merchants have different needs, and is the challenge of like as a service company, as an SI, is the trick is finding the best tool or the best platform for a particular client, right? And specifically Shopify versus Magento, there is a lot of conflict and animosity at times, but look,
Right.
Shopify is not the best solution for everything, right? So like they still have pretty strong limitations on what they can do. Like one of the things that people don't realize is that you can only have like I believe that the limit is 99 variants per product, right? So Magento, you don't have that limit. You want to control a product with thousands of options, you can have that. You shouldn't, but you can.
Right. Right.
And it's gonna be this year is gonna be interesting with the new set of announcements they released for on Shopify Unite, like multi-currency support, multi-inventory support. Those were pretty strong limitations of Shopify. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens on that market.
Yeah, those are interesting announcements. I'd heard, I want to say almost a year ago from somebody that they were getting ready to launch multi-store. And I know that's one of the big things that, big limitations that people see there. And so multi-inventory and currency, I guess, is a pretty good piece of that, solving that problem. So yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes. And so Browze, you talked a little bit about, but tell me more about what Browze is, and it's a marketplace, something like that.
Yeah, it's the way to describe it would be direct to consumer, right? So it's a direct to consumer marketplace. So what the platform or what the site is doing, very similar to Wish.com or I forget the name of the other one. There is two very prominent ones right now. What we're doing is directly connecting sellers from Asia to consumers and jumping and removing a lot of the middlemen for marketing, for hosting, for shipping away from that, right? So there is a lot of, and until I joined Browze, I was really not familiar with this kind of direct-to-consumer retail. It's not the kind of things that I had the opportunity to deal with at Demac. And I'm learning a lot about this market, right? Just the volume alone that Browze is doing right now is quite higher than what we ever did at any of the sites that work with Demac.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing something north of, I think last month we did north of 20,000 orders alone. So
that's intense. 20,000 orders in a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad at all. And what platform are you guys on? Oh,
so,
it's commerce.
No. This is going to be the fun part. We're actually on Magento 1CE. The core of this thing.
Nice.
Yep, and the reason is they started like 5 years ago as a regular retailer, and 2 years or so ago they kind of pivoted into becoming more of that direct-to-consumer marketplace, and we're continuing to evolve the model, right? So in order to become that direct-to-consumer marketplace, a lot of what I'm doing, stepping as CTO, is going to be kind of playing two roles: a bit of the operations manager right now, and a lot of on the technology side to set the direction and help the business meet the goals that they have. We're working on a couple interesting stuff. My favorite so far, one of the things that I had to implement very recently, is the strategy that we're playing with right now. Is we have a bunch of what we call micro brand sites that are hosted on Shopify. So it like the Browze as the site itself has 60,000 products right now that are available. What we're doing is we're grabbing the top hero products from every category, and we're putting those on their own site and running social media campaigns and very directed campaigns to try to market those. Mm-hmm. It's working really well so far. We're using Shopify for that, but the kicker is, and some of people in the Magento community are going to find this funny, is we're using Magento as the source of truth, the backend. So awesome. I have fulfilled up to this point about 15 to 20,000 Shopify orders using Magento.
Nice. Best of both worlds. So I think I saw something on I want to say Reddit the other day asking specifically about syncing orders between Shopify and Magento. I don't know. That wasn't you then,
No,
right?
that wasn't me.
Yeah.
No.
No, you guys figured that out a while ago. No, that's so funny because I think it was yesterday or the day before I saw somebody asking about that specifically, asking for solutions there. So that's funny. That's that's an interesting combo.
Yeah,
Um,
it's fun having to do the mapping between the products and the way the two platforms store that as well orders. But I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some irony there, like Magento fulfilling orders for Shopify.
right. There's a joke in there. There's a lot of jokes in there. People in the comments, if you can flesh out those jokes, help us out. No, but and I mean, being on Magento One as a merchant, I would say probably the majority of merchants are on M1 right now.
Yep.
Possibly the smartest person in the Magento world, Colin Mollenauer. They're on Magento One. He's built a lot of interesting stuff around M1, and so yes, I mean, I wouldn't even say that's necessarily unusual.
No,
At this
it's
time.
not, right? And now I'm gonna be faced with the decision that a lot of the the merchants that we had at Demac had to make is like, do we re-platform to Magento 2? And what is the process for doing that look right now?
Right. And now you're on the other side of the table. So the incentives are different, right? When you're the agency, it's like, hey, let's do a build, let's get some money. When you're it's like, wait a second, what is this the right ROI? Like, is this the right time to do it? Should we do it later? Should we phase it in later? And then you probably start looking at other platforms too, because it's essentially a re-platform, right?
It is. As much as we don't like to use that word, we don't, right?
No.
It's a great platform, and it gets even more interesting because one of the things that we're working on right now at Browze is we're building a mobile app for the iOS and the Google Store that unfortunately is using all the Magento APIs as the source of truth and the source of information. So I have a mobile app that is pulling catalog products, orders, and everything that is going through to the Magento One REST API. So I have way too many things that are now relying on that core. Is all the Shopify integrations and the mobile app and a couple other stuff. So it's going to be an interesting problem. I'm really looking forward to have the opportunity. One of the things that I'm finding really enjoyable after the transition is the ability to just have a couple problems or one single problem and have the ability to focus, right? Coming from the service side and from the agency side, it's like you have 4 different fires all at the same time and everyone is screaming the loudest, and it can get really, really exhausting at times, like just trying to manage that.
Totally. Yeah. No, I remember when I was in house with a merchant, I really liked that too, like being able to kind of figure out what you want to focus on and have the opportunity to think about like, okay, what's the highest value thing for this business? Let me focus on it versus like, what is the client telling me to do? Let me focus on that.
Yeah.
And of course, as an agency, you're also thinking about what's the highest value and advising your clients on that. But there's a degree of separation from when you're in house and more directly kind of prioritizing things.
Yep. And not having to deal and worry about the billable hours is kind of nice as well.
Right. So no more time tracking.
No, well,
that's fantastic.
Not as aggressively as would be at an agency.
Right. That's really cool. And so can you talk at all about how you're doing the mapping of orders from Magento to Shopify? Any using any tools for that or?
No, I built that integration from scratch. Right now it's kind of hacky, for lack of a better word. But it's powering 5 different stores on the Shopify side and syncing tons of orders, thousands of orders, as well products.
Right.
We are potentially thinking about putting a bit more of development effort on that one and putting that on the marketplace and becoming kind of the drop shipper, for lack of a better term, for a bunch of Shopify stores, so anyone can pull our products into their own store.
That's interesting. I mean, that would be an entirely different kind of like product line for Browze as a company, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's, again, there is a couple things that we're working on and having to come up with the architecture. And one of the things that I'm doing right now is building the technology team, right? So it's a small company right now. It's less than 10 people, and for a lot of the things that we want to do, we actually need more bodies and more experienced people from the Magento side and e-commerce side. So, do you know anyone that does recruiting for?
Let me think. It's not coming to mind. It's not.
No.
I'm sure it'll come to mind eventually, though. No, that's really cool, man. Just building out that team and getting in early. And I mean, like you said, you were so involved in the growth of Demac. By the way, why is it Demac if there's only one E? I don't get that. Help me out, bro.
You're asking the Mexican why the Canadians are pronouncing the particular number. I don't know. That's the way it has always been.
A Mexican walks into a Canadian bar. there's a joke there.
Pretty much.
By the way, what part of Mexico are you from?
The north Mexico, so that would be Monterrey.
Okay, cool.
Not very popular. There is nothing for tourists over there. No beaches.
Okay.
No.
Nice. Yeah, my wife's her mom's from Durango, and then her dad's from the city. What's the main city? DF?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Federal district, for lack of a better.
Yeah. Nice, man. So we're gonna talk about cannabis legalization. What's the deal with that? You said you wanted to talk about.
Well, it's one of the interesting things that is happening here over Canada in terms of e-commerce and retail, right? So as people might or might not know, like July 1st, technically at the federal level, cannabis is legal in Canada, right? So, but here's where I guess
is that July 1st this coming year or last year? Okay,
this year.
So it's just getting ready to land.
Yeah, it's getting ready to land, and a lot of what is happening right now for every province, essentially our equivalent of states, is trying to figure out what the legislation looks on their end. So are they going to sell online? Is it going to go through a government authorized store? Are they going to license other retailers to sell locally? And the reason I wanted to talk about this, and I think it's kind of relevant, is because Shopify actually got and it's going to be providing the e-commerce component for the province of Ontario. So if you go and buy cannabis in Ontario, and this year it's going to be a Shopify store.
What? Wait. So what do you mean that they got the ownership of that province?
So okay.
Couldn't anybody who wanted to sell in that province just sell? Or
nope. No. That varies by province. This is like, here's the fun thing. Like, it's the same thing that alcohol works over here, right? So if you go, like, there is no, let me go to 7-Eleven and buy a freaking cooler of beer. That doesn't work here. Like, there is this Crown Corporation in Canada called, or at least in Ontario, called LCBO. So it's a liquor board, whatever. So it's a company by the government that is managed by the government, where the revenue goes to the government, that manages the sale and distribution of alcohol in the province. And depending on what province you're dealing with, is going to look the same way for cannabis. So this is not anyone can open a shop and start selling weed from their basement or from their storefront. You have to go through certain process. And just because you're dealing with government, the actual process of, like, it's not like any agency or like from the States or from the world can just go and bid on that project, right? There is an actual process for bidding this as well. Pretty heavy legislation, because you're dealing with government and with citizen information about how you handle that.
Interesting. By the way, Yunia Sid joined. He said, "Buenos dias, muchachos. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining." Also, Alex Somerville, the liquor, whatever. I like it. I guess he's in anything having to do with liquor. He's a fan of.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
These are your boys. These are your boys that are.
Yeah, Alex Somerville is a senior front end developer at Demac Media.
Nice.
Kerry Morrison used to be the president of the company.
Oh, nice.
He's now retired, I believe. Right, Kerry?
All right, made those bucks. So that's interesting. I mean, we get a whole topic. We get a whole topic on this, but just like one company, like, and you see like Justin Trudeau at the Shopify events, and them very friendly, and it's like, I think that's cool and everything, but then it's like, wow, like it's sort of like entrenched interests. Like now they're the only ones that can sell in that whole province, and it'll reduce competition a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that Shopify is the one that is licensed to sell the weed, right? It's still the government, but they selected Shopify as a solution provider for the e-commerce component. The reason that gets interesting is how is Shopify going to tackle some of the requirements, right? There is a lot of legislation around how you handle the data, where is the data stored, how's the data move, backups. Like it's going to be tough for any company, Shopify, Magento, Workaria, BigCommerce, to tackle that. Like for example, like one of the challenges if we were a bit in Magento is that it has to be hosted in Canada. Magento Cloud doesn't have a data center in Canada, right?
Interesting. Got it. Yeah, yeah.
And still, it's going to be a big thing. Like you're talking about an industry that is potentially as low as $9 billion annually in sales, up to probably 22, $23 billion in cannabis.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So
that's that's intense. So the requirements for handling of personal information related to cannabis sales, are those very similar to like GDPR type requirements?
they're similar. It's all about how you GDPR is more about giving the citizen or the people the right to, hey, what information is being collected from me, where is that, how is that information stored, and the access to actually delete that information, right? What we're talking here is more about at the government, at the provincial and federal level. Like it's the Privacy and Information Act, and each province has a variation of that one. So and you have to go through a lot of red tape. It comes down to that, and it even limits. For example, if you're going to be using New Relic for monitoring, right? You need to make sure that you're properly sanitizing the data. You don't want any data like personal information to leak through the tracing that they do for database queries or errors. So it's
I think GDPR has similar stuff like that. But like you can't just be logging personal information. That would be an issue. You have to, your backups, you have to have a certain level of encryption, and you have to make sure you roll them out in a certain time period and things like that.
correct.
But wow, that's interesting. So then they're going to have to roll out all that functionality probably as quickly as possible after the new law hits, so they can start capitalizing on those weed sales.
Yep. So, and I'm curious to see how they're actually going to build a solution around that, because one of the requirements, as far as I recall, is that it cannot be hosted with any other client information, right? So, is Shopify going to launch a single tenant instance of their platform for each province, for each government? So, right?
So they would need a single tenant instance for each province in order to be compliant.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. It's
possible.
I'm curious to see.
Nobody knows exactly how these laws are going to be enforced, right? And
no, the laws are not that new. How is Shopify going to meet those requirements is where I'm curious.
So what is it that's new if the laws aren't new? And then are there different laws related to cannabis specifically that are coming into effect? Like what's...
Well, other than the fact that it's becoming legal and there is regulations about like every province, for example, one province might limit your daily purchase or weekly purchases to 30 grams of cannabis per day, right? So Shopify now has to build that into their platform to make sure that they're not breaking the law. They might have a requirement where, hey, we need to do proper age verification before you can actually log into the site. Because we don't want anyone under 19, or we don't want anyone from outside the province to be able to look at the inventory and actually place orders.
Right.
So Shopify definitely has the infrastructure and the size for handling something like this, but it's no easy task, the one that they have, especially considering that they have, when they actually got the contract or the... for Ontario, I think they have less than 6 months for implementing this, and a lot of the provinces are right now rushing to try to get things in place for July 1st.
Oh, wow. That's wild. By the way, Alex said, happy to be here respecting and mocking you. And he's a hell of a smart guy, even if his acronym retention isn't great. Sounds like there's a story there around your acronym retention.
No, it's more Alex being Alex.
Right.
Miss you, buddy.
No, yeah, that's. I mean, gosh, that's going to be just massive. I mean, is it legal to buy cannabis in the U.S. online?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on you guys
It's all
haven't
state by state and stuff.
right.
That's super interesting. I know in Texas, I just recently moved from California to Texas. In Texas, it's fully illegal.
Yeah.
So we're a little behind the times there. But yeah, I mean, that's just going to be such a massive industry, and hopefully we'll really take a bite out of organized crime and stuff like that. I mean, you see the same story from alcohol prohibition and all that kind of stuff, like repeating itself. So, hopefully that'll happen, because organized crime is kind of sucks.
It does. And right now it's kind of fun seeing the transition, because since the announcement of is becoming legal was given last year, a lot of dispensaries actually popped up in every city across Canada, which they're technically illegal right now, but no one is actually going and prosecuting at least most of them. So coming July 1st, you're going to see a lot of real estate disappear from Toronto. It's like everyone is just closing shop.
All the dispensaries are closing shop.
Yeah, they're not allowed to operate.
So they're until July 1st, or?
Yeah, coming July 1st, once it becomes legal at the federal level, the dispensaries are technically illegal right now. But most of them are probably just going to close, if not all of them.
After July 1st?
After July 1st.
But why, if it becomes legal then?
Because they're not the only stores that are going to be legal to
operate. Not going to be licensed.
Correct. It's only the government, right? In Ontario, the province where I live, they're opening this year. They're going to open 80 different stores, and the goal is to have 150 by 2020, I believe.
But they're all government. So that was your whole point, is that they're all government owned. So when Shopify does it, they're doing it for the government as a client. The government is going to own that e-commerce store. They're just powering it.
Yeah, e-commerce and retail space.
And retail, yeah. Okay, got it. Man, government likes to get involved in stuff up in Canada. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Look, it's they make a lot of money, right? It's the same thing with liquor. It's a $22 billion dollar industry, and they get in revenue, like, what do you want, like 7 to 8 billion every year?
Mm-hmm.
So it's makes sense.
Yeah. So we have a question coming in from the one and only Ben Roby, DG Digital. How has your work-life balance changed since moving from agency life to merchant life? By the way, how long have you been at Browze exactly?
So I gave my notice at Demac in April 1st, as one does.
Wow, it's a nice, healthy notice.
Well, if you're gonna quit, do it on April Fool, right?
Right. On April Fools. They're like, "Good one, Allan," and then you're like,
"No, it's
sorry, not a joke," and they're like, "That's really a good one, Allan."
Yeah. So I had the entire month of April to transition. Before I had kind of been talking with the guys at Browze and advising a little bit. And April was the month where ramping up at Browze and kind of scaling down at Demac and trying to hand off all the balls that were in the air. So technically full time, only 2 weeks. This is my second week at Browze. In reality, it's a little bit longer than that.
Gotcha. And so how has work-life balance changed?
It's very different. So one of the reasons I moved to Browze is because I'm only going to the actual office 2 times per week. And
they have an office in Toronto?
Yeah, they have a co-working space right now, North York, which is north of the city. Pretty nice space. I'm going twice a week there. Rest of the time, I'm working from home. I took over the spare bedroom that we had at the apartment, and I'm using that as my office right now. And yeah, much healthy life balance right now. It's like I'm a lot of what I was doing and a lot of what was happening at my life at Demac is the relationship with work was starting to become very unhealthy. Like, it was 12-hour, 16-hour days, and like I didn't actually feel that I could disconnect from work because there was always one fire. There was always the next client that is having problems.
Right.
There's always the next, again, team of 40 developers, right? So there's always something that is happening, from one-on-ones, performance reviews, all the nonsense and management that comes with it.
Yeah,
So,
that is not necessarily a negative reflection on
no,
DMAC. It's kind of the nature of agency life to an
it is.
extent. I mean, certain companies can mitigate that a little bit more than others, but yeah, managing 40 developers for a large solutions partner, that's going to keep you busy.
Yep, it's challenging. And part of the fun that I had over the past 2 years was trying to figure out how to do that properly. One of the things that I did to try to manage some of that load was having what we call the practice team. So essentially, kind of the middle management layer. So about 3 to 4 people, and when you do the math, it's like everyone gets 8 to 10 people that they manage directly. So they're the ones that are doing the one-on-ones. They're the ones that are kind of doing the day-to-day with the development team. So I don't have to get that involved. So
Nice.
that's the only way you can scale something like that. Otherwise, it's just insane.
Right. What advice would you have for agencies in general, maybe that are a little smaller and are growing, or maybe that are bigger? And you've been with DMAC from pretty much the very beginning, seen a lot of growth, had a lot of responsibility in that growth.
Yep.
What is something that maybe you think agencies could do better? What are some tips you would give, pitfalls to avoid? Like what advice would you give?
Definitely get your process fully defined, or at the very least very solid before you start growing. One of the most challenging things that I saw happen with DMAC is like, oh, we're 10 people. Now this year we're 20. Now we're 30. And 30, 25, 30 is what I think things start breaking down. Like it's very easy at that size to, oh no, I'm just meeting someone for lunch, or we're talking, or we're sitting across the room, right? Once you start going to 40, 60, 100, if your process is not top notch, is not very well defined, it's just a lot more challenging to make any changes.
Right. Totally. And then, no, I mean, not to pry on any stuff, but like you guys also had some remote offices and how do you think, for people that are considering starting a remote office, what do you think are things to look out for? Actually, one of the people that shouted you out on Twitter, was, I think Mudasar, is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Out in Pakistan. He said that you were like the most amazing person you'd ever work with and stuff. So
no, that's very kind of him. So Mudasar was part of our Karachi office. So we had a team in Pakistan that no longer exists, but for a while, for a couple of years, we had that team. Oh, looks like a bunch of DMAC people are joining.
yeah, we got Demac account in here. Hey guys,
Again, DMAC.
Oh my gosh, DMAC. I'm so sorry. But somebody explain to me why there's only one E, please. Thank you. And then also Devin Hurst, shout out, buddy. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, Allan, go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying advice for remote offices. I don't know if I have a lot to offer there. We didn't had a like full the largest team that we had was the Karachi team. And the most challenging thing is if you're actually going to go with the remote office, and most of your company, most of your team is actually going to be on one particular location, like we were in Toronto, it's hard to keep the culture in sync, because if you're doing a social event or a party, it's hard to keep the other people that are remote included. So definitely give that mix of where we have a big office and we're partially remote. I don't know if it really works. I don't know if I would do it that way in hindsight. I would either go fully remote, or at the very least have a couple smaller offices across the country or across the world if you want. But it's tough. It is very difficult.
Right. Well, and then interestingly now, like you said, you're in a co-working space where you go 2 days a week, and then I'm assuming that the main corporate office is in Asia somewhere. So you're sort of like a remote team now, I'd imagine, to like the mothership of Browze.
No, actually, the core office is here in Toronto.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry, because I thought you were saying that they mostly help sellers in Asia to sell direct to consumer into other markets. But so you guys are based in Toronto. That's cool.
Yep.
Nice. So you guys are just in a co-working space
right now. Yes, we're going through the fun of getting funding and seed rounds and all that jazz. And once we're done through the first one, we're probably going to grow the team a little bit, continue working, continue getting funding, and probably at one point getting our own office or going fully remote. I don't know yet. It's too early to say.
And how long has Browze been around?
Browze as a company has been around for 5 years, I believe. They, as I said, they started as a merchant, and then 2 years ago, we're going to actually pivot and we're going to go into the direction of being the direct-to-consumer marketplace.
Nice. We have another question here. Ganti and Shero. What's up, Ganti? And thanks for joining. Allan, can you talk a little bit about how to structure the teams? I think, Ganti, feel free to clarify that question if you want, but I think he's talking about structuring remote teams or the different teams within the agency.
Sure. I can talk about the way the teams are structured at Demac, and the way that I think that model works pretty well. And essentially, the way that we call them stacks, or Demac calls them stacks, is teams about 6 people. Depending on the platform and depending on what they're doing, it's going to be 2 front ends, 2 back ends, 1 project manager, and 1 team lead. So you have your project manager or account manager and your team lead to kind of provide the leadership. That pair, that relationship provides the technical leadership and the kind of management of here's the times, the priorities, project management as a whole. And then you have the actual team. And that size of 6-7 people is actually very effective. Anything larger than that, it becomes very difficult to actually coordinate. Anything smaller than that, and you start running into problems if someone has to take vacations or get sick. You don't have that kind of redundancy or fallback on that team. So 6 to 7 people, and essentially not isolated teams, but smaller teams that are to some degree autonomous, right? You have your project manager, your team lead, and the actual development team.
Got it. And then so you call those stacks. Why do you call them stacks, by the way?
I forget where the term originally comes from. I think originally we wanted to go with pots, but it wasn't a great name, so we went with stacks.
What is pot? Why did you want to call it pots?
That wasn't my call at the point. If someone from the Demac team remembers and wants to talk on the chat, please go ahead.
Got it. Cool. So, and then I think the other thing we were going to talk about was hiring junior developers from boot camps.
Yeah.
Which is something I've been interested in because I've always thought boot camps seem really interesting. And recently I kind of put some feelers out. I was like, has anybody ever hired from a boot camp? And not that many people I know have. So I think I mean, I'm interested to hear how you guys made it work. It seems like there's probably sort of an art to making that work because they're not necessarily coming out of the code camp totally ready to just start billing for, well, you just tell me, you talk about it, you know more than I do.
Yeah. And that is kind of interesting that in your experience, not a lot of people hire from boot camps because a lot of what I did at Demac, or a lot of the hiring that I did at Demac, is coming from HackerU and BitMaker. Like a couple of people that are in the chat right now, like Devin, actually came from one of those programs.
Shout out, Devin. By the way, my brother's name is Devin, different spelling, but
nice.
I have a close place in my heart for all Devins.
So, and it's very interesting because the reason I like those boot camps and hiring people that are coming from there is like, one, you know what their technical level is. You know that after 9 to 12 weeks of coming out of that program, it's only so far that they can get ahead in terms of their knowledge and experience. So you know that at the very best they're going to be here. But you know that up front. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of the people that are coming from those boot camps is they're pivoting from a different career, from a different path in life, right? So people that have come from backgrounds of, I just finished my master in history and I want to maybe go into becoming a lawyer because all my family is lawyers, or maybe I'm going to go try this development thing for 9 to 12 months. And I've seen people go from, I'm a junior developer, not a lot of experience, to one of the guys actually, after 3 years at Demac, just left to go start his own software company.
Wow.
So it's, the key thing there is that you're not hiring for the technical level or the experience. You're hiring for the people that have that drive, that passion, and that really want to succeed. Like,
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just sorry. I was just gonna say, how can you tell if they, motivation and drive is sort of an elusive thing. It can be hard to, you know it when you see it kind of a thing, but like, how do you, how do you determine that? Like what, what questions do you ask? Like, how can you tell?
The way I like to explain this one, and I'm gonna probably butcher my explanation on that. This I try to look for what I call the developer mindset. Right? There is some people that are, that they have that quality that in a couple of years they're just gonna be top notch developers because they have that passion, that thirst for kind of understanding how things behave. They don't just stop at, oh, I guess that's the way it works, right? You're looking for someone that is actually have that tendency to go a bit into the rabbit holes and try to explain why things work.
Like,
That
there's like a genuine curiosity or something like that.
Yeah. And the other thing that is valuable from the boot camps is a lot of the people that are coming there is they're not coming from fresh from college. They're not they're on a different stage of life. They might be on their late 20s, mid 30s, and I just spent 10 years in the restaurant industry, and I'm a sommelier, and the next step for me was opening my own restaurant. I don't want to deal with that shit. I'm gonna go try and do software development. So
Yeah.
those are the stories, and those are the kind of people that I try to hire for because there is a very good chance those are the people that are actually going to succeed.
Right. And so, like, what are some examples of, like, I don't know, things that you would, hear people, maybe even hear people say? And by the way, quick shout outs to Tim, Stoivo for coming. Thanks for joining, buddy. Oh, and then Devin corrected you. It wasn't pots, it was pods.
Excellent.
POD, which makes sense. I can see why they'd be called a pod.
Yep.
And so what are like some examples of things that, like somebody that you interviewed out of a boot camp and you could tell they weren't going to work out because maybe they said X, Y, and Z or whatever, and then for somebody that they were going to work out, like what are some of the things they said or some of the like signs that you saw?
Yeah, that's
Like, I could imagine maybe the people that aren't going to work out, maybe it's just like a better job, like, oh yeah, coding is like a better job, I want a better job, versus like, oh, I'm really interested in this specific thing, I'm this specific problem or challenge I'm trying to understand right now with code. Is that something you saw?
Yeah, it's that. This is one of the things is you can also start poking about like their previous career. What is what they found attractive? What was the thing that
You see Steve trolling me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to pay too much attention to the chat, not to get distracted. But
it's hard. It's an art to bring the chat in without getting distracted. It's a little tricky.
Yeah, you're looking for that kind of thirst or for that kind of hunger to do that, and that don't necessarily mean that you're hiring for people that are right now that they have that passion for development. They might have that passion on other stuff. One of the stories that I like telling, and this wasn't my hire, this was actually either Matt or Dimitri back in the day, but they hired one of the developers they hired initially was because he was passionate about Minecraft and customizing Minecraft and building mods for Minecraft. And hey, you have that kind of personality, that kind of spark.
You want to build stuff, like you're like, you think building stuff is cool, and you're out there trying to figure out how to build stuff.
Yeah, and those are the kind of people that thrive at an agency or a company like Demac, where a lot of the learning happens on the job, right? There is some onboarding, not as much as I would say that I would like to have, or but a lot of the learning happens. Hey, here's a couple tickets. Here is a problem. Here is go and build, go and drive. Like it's here's the deep end of the pool. Good luck. We know that you can drive.
Mm-hmm.
You can swim.
Yeah. And then Alex said, by the way, I found that the really successful front end developers were coming in and asking him questions about technologies they'd been learning and hearing about. And that was always a good sign. So that sort of falls into that, like, they're really curious, like they're anybody that they can, any way they can learn, whether you're doing an interview or on an online forum, they're just trying to soak up information versus just like, oh, I just want a cool job type of a thing.
Yeah. Yep, and the other thing is that is really important for hiring, I would say, is the culture fit, right?
Right.
Sorry again. Damn it, Alex.
Alex was correcting himself on the spelling of Q.
Yep.
When I saw that, I didn't even realize he meant that kind of a Q. I was like, what is he talking about? Oh, and then by the way, I just want to real quick, Gentian had clarified his previous question about structuring, how do you structure teams?
Mm-hmm.
And what he meant to say was, how do you structure remote teams so they take ownership and run autonomously and scale from there? So if we could, I know it's a little bit jumpy, but if we could jump back to that topic, I think you would answer how do you structure teams within Demac as a whole, but specifically, like, how do you structure remote teams so that they really take ownership?
Sure, and I mean it's a different question, or it's a different answer if part like is a team remote in a single location like we had on the Karachi team, like where they were remote from the core DMAP, but they were on their own office in Karachi, or do you have people all over the place in different time zones with different priorities, different lifestyles? And if it's the later, I don't have that much experience, to be quite honest, on managing a team like that. I'm going into that in Browze, where we're probably going to be all over the place. Right now, I'm one of the developers that I'm working with at the company. He's in Karachi as well. So we're kind of having to deal with the time zone, with the language barrier a little bit. You don't have to stop.
There's a fly flying around that I had to get. Dude, the flies are so bad here in Texas, man. I see them, so I always try to kill them. Anyways, sorry. So yeah, so you're saying difference in terms of whether you're fully distributed, everybody's on different time zones, versus you've got one main office and one remote office where there's like a team culture within that office in wherever it is, Karachi or yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that I would say that I'm pretty certain, or that I can make that call, is that if you're going fully remote, hiring juniors becomes very, very difficult, if not near impossible, because there is a lot that happens on that person-to-person mentorship and relationship with the rest of the team that you don't have when they're remote. If you're hiring intermediates and seniors that are a little bit more mature and responsible and have more experience of how to work on their own, that is easier to pull off. If you're trying to, no, I'm just going to go and hire juniors from 5 different cities, and that's going to be my remote team.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that gets a little bit more into where Commerce Hero makes sense, is you're hiring that senior mid-level, and maybe you're open to remote and stuff like that. But the other strategy, which is probably a lot more cost effective, is to hire juniors and really train them up. And I think a lot of agencies have done that. And then the challenge there is just that there's a ramp up period, and
yep.
How long? I don't know if we answered the question on how to do the structure of the remote teams yet. We can circle back to that. But how long of the ramp up period do you generally see for bringing people in out of a boot camp? How long is it until they're pretty much self-sufficient, billing for work, getting stuff done?
That's an interesting question. I would say it depends on the platform. There is different levels of depth, like the onboarding period for a Shopify developer or a Workaria developer versus Magento developer is kind of different. Not to take away from any of the platforms, but
because you got to be super smart to work on Magento, is what Allan's trying to say.
That is exactly what I'm trying to avoid. Thank you. I would say it takes for Magento. I would say it takes about 3 months for them to be kind of comfortable on what.
I mean, that's fantastic to take somebody out of a code boot camp within 3 months. They're self-sufficient. That's.
Yeah, but and again, this is nothing this is no claim on the process, on the onboarding. It's on the people, right? If you hire the right people, they're gonna thrive no matter what you throw at them. That is the key of hiring. Otherwise, you need to have very, very strict and developed process that a lot of agencies really don't have, or don't have the time or resources to build. Like right. Everyone, like I would wish that Demac or any agency had the budget and the resources for, oh no, your first month of the company or your first 3 months is just going to be training and education, and you're not actually going to do any billable work. The reality of agency work and agency life is that is not going to happen, or right. Rarely happen.
Right. Yeah, like companies like Google and these big companies, they're starting to have these insanely, involved onboarding and training processes where, you're getting, which is great, if you have the resources to do that as a Google, but that's going to be tough to do. So question from Tim, which might be related is, how do you deal with annoying developers who complain on the daily? How do you
Um,
not point fingers?
oh god.
Hopefully he doesn't work at no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he does. Uh,
I'm sure he's asking for a friend. I'm absolutely sure he's asking for a friend at
oh,
another company.
and to answer Timothy's question, actually, we can answer Mark Lewis' question a little bit further down. Is how to review and maintain code quality with junior developers, right? You take advantage of that annoying developer that always complains about the quality, that is always trying to push and make things better. So you rely on those people to kind of do the code reviews, push the team, set the standard, and keep the bar a bit high.
So when somebody's complaining, pointing fingers, like, hey, like instead of just making that be a fight and attention, like, hey, listen, you're a little bit more, picky, which can be a good thing. Like, hey, let's give you some responsibility for code reviews so you can just, bust people's chops all day long and improve our code quality, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and from my perspective, people that like to, they're not annoying, right? It's like Tim is kind of throwing himself under the bus a little bit here, but he's kind of
the
the
guy.
guy.
He's the one.
He's a very, very solid developer that was always, or is always pushing for, no, this is the right way of doing it. We're not going to let the standards down.
Right. Gonna
So
hold the bar, hold the line at all costs.
yeah. So and again, for juniors and for doing that kind of onboarding, you have to rely on the rest of your team to not let the standards fall off.
Right. Just scrolling down here through getting caught up. Doopity-doopity-doopity-doo. Junior bootcamp devs from Gentian. Is it a good idea in theory? And depending on where you are as a company, they can be a good fit. In our case, they were good a few years back, but cost you too much overtime. So that, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they can be a good fit depending on kind of where you are as a company, or do you think that's a hiring strategy that can really scale no matter how big you get as an agency?
From my perspective, I think it can scale. The thing that you don't want to do, right? The thing that you really want to avoid with junior developers is that you want to bring them on board, but you don't want to bring too many at the same time. Because at that point, you're kind of creating a smaller group, a group that is not going to have the same culture, that is not going to have the same standard, the same understanding, right? So you want to start onboarding those developers and make them part of the team. Make sure that they actually get they absorb the culture, they absorb the standards, the way of working, what is permissive, what is not. If you do that too fast, then yeah, your quality is going to drop and you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right. What are you and just rough numbers if you have anything offhand, but I'm curious, because you mentioned you kind of got to pick. I'm seeing that fly again. You kind of got to pick the right person, and then you have to see that hunger and that drive, plug them in, and like you said, in the deep end, see if they work. Like how many people overall, like juniors out of boot camp, like have you interviewed? Total number you've interviewed? How many have you brought on board? And then out of the ones you brought on board, how many actually succeeded to be long-term employees?
Ooh, that's a lot of questions and a lot of things to think about in one go.
Total number of interviews, total number hired, and then how many stuck around, or just roughly like I don't know, 20% of them stuck around, or 50% of them stuck around.
Oh, there's a lot of people. I would say from the current team at Demac, there is about 10 people, 8 people that have come from boot camps, working on all kinds of platforms. Some of them have stayed for an average of 4 years, 3 years. So they stay. Typically, what is the standard in the industry? 2 years, and people start.
That's fantastic. Yeah, 3-4 years is great.
Yeah, so retention hasn't been historically for Demac that bad. It's been actually pretty good.
And your tenure there is what, 7 years? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Like officially on full time on like when I moved to Toronto, I hit 6 years in May 1st.
Nice. That's awesome. So that's interesting. Any idea how many total I'm okay. I'm being nosy. I'm being nosy.
No. I'm trying to run the math. It's like I would say, like, look, I would say I have interviewed between 5 and 10 people in average for every single one that I have hired.
Got it.
So you can do the math from there.
No, that's a yeah, no. That's a great sort of metric to have in mind.
And the other question you asked is what percentage of those have worked out? Pretty much all of them. I actually had worse luck with senior people.
As far as
catching up with the platform, being able to be like being able to learn and kind of catch up and learn a new skill or learn a new environment. I had people that were very senior with a lot of years experience in development that it just didn't work out. They're not capable of catching up with. It's a very, like, e-commerce is a very fast moving ecosystem. It's a very fast moving space. On top of that, you have to learn the platform. You might have to learn the language depending on where you're coming from. And yeah, like the juniors that we have hired or that Demac has hired so far have worked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people experience that where they're like, all right, I'm gonna spend a lot of money, hire somebody really senior, try it out. Hopefully they just solve all my problems, and then maybe it doesn't work out. I mean, there's some people that are just absolutely worth every penny for that higher salary range. But there's other people that aren't a fit for one reason or another, and then you, as a company, you get burned on that, and you're like, this is too much. This is too much risk hiring at such a high salary level, and then they might be even worse, like you're saying. And so then it might really make sense to double down on that, on the junior training strategy.
Yep. And it's finding the balance, right? It's tough if your strategy is only hiring juniors, right? Because you also have to be or account for, okay, we're going to be the company that is going to be the learning ground for a lot of junior developers. What are the steps? How far can they go? And how soon do we need to start thinking about replacement? What is, and is that is one of the realities of the business. You have to start thinking about what is the lifetime of a developer and what do we need to do in order to manage that, right? It's tricky.
Right. Yeah. And actually, this gets into the second part of Gentin's question, which is the productivity is not there compared to a mid or senior dev. Then by the time they're with you 2 to 3 years, they want to make a change, rightly so, or get poached. You mentioned that you got an average of like 4 years, which is great. But like, how do you think about that? As a hiring manager managing 40 developers, obviously as a business, you have to make an ROI on every employee. So there's the initial salary, there's that ramp up period where they're not super productive yet, then they become productive, and then whatever their average tenure is, you hopefully are making money during that period, so that if they were to leave after 2, 3, 4 years, as a business, you're still profitable and able to survive. So how do you think about that? Like, how do you think about that calculation?
I mean, in the actual ramp up time, I think going into the business model and how that works out, I think it's a little bit of inappropriate for me to comment on at this point. But
for sure. Feel free to push back. I know.
But it does work. The challenging part here is kind of trying to account for those moves, right? So, and having that continuous pipeline of new talent and new people that you can interview. That is a challenging part, and that is something that is by far the most challenging thing that I found doing my job, is having that constant influx of new talent that you can hire at any point, because you never know what, like, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's the nature of the industry. Like, someone that started 2 years ago might find a better opportunity or might decide to go into product or fintech or a bunch of different reasons for why people transition. The challenging part as a hiring manager is kind of always have a fallback and always have that continuous flux of people. And I don't know if that quite answers your question, but
yeah, we can, again, feel free to post again if we didn't quite answer it. Well, I'll continue to grill Allan here. But then you touched on Mark's question already a little bit. but I'm just kind of going down here chronologically. How do you review and maintain code quality with junior developers? My experience is big agencies that are hiring a lot end up sacrificing there because of time resource constraints. And of course, Mark's a little biased because he has a smaller agency. So he has, it's like you said, as a smaller, when you were 10 people, you've got everything's tighter. You're closer as an agency. As you scale, you have different problems to solve. But so you mentioned, getting that annoying person to do code review for the juniors, but bigger picture, how do you help to make sure code quality is high?
Yeah, and again, that up to a certain size, that becomes part of the process, right? So code reviews, well, like you have to rely on the people that are senior in the team, right? If you remember, I mentioned that the structure at the company or at Demac was these stacks, and you had one team lead, one senior technical person as kind of the head of that team. So you have to rely on those people to, hey, we're having our stand-ups, we're having conversations, we're helping each other out to make sure that we're delivering good quality work. And again, I want to just make a point that Tim by no means is annoying. Like, he called himself that, but I had the pleasure to work with him for a couple of years. Really, really smart developer, and I dearly miss working with him.
Now you know what it's like when you're on air and you're saying things, and then you realize, like, oh shoot, did I offend somebody? And you have to have to clarify.
Yeah. He knows that I mean well, right, Tim?
Nice. So sorry. So you were talking about processes to keep code quality high and stuff like that with bringing on engineers.
A big part of it, from my perspective, and in my opinion, is making sure that the team as a whole holds a standard, because you can have all amounts of unit testing and CI and continuous deployment, but like the tooling. And again, this is probably going to come and bite me in the ass, but the tooling really doesn't matter that much as the culture of the engineering team. If you had really good, solid culture where everyone is trying to do their best, where they really have that ownership of what they're building, it's my code at the end of the day, it's my name on this thing, and you can make sure that the team keeps each other accountable. That is 10 times or 100 times more valuable than any CI or automation tool that you can have.
Totally. I feel really similarly. People give me crap because I'm not like super into unit testing and stuff. And I'm by no means an example of like, a great developer. And my situation is very unique because I tend to just work by myself and I bootstrap things and I build the software. So I literally do own all of it. But I think that ownership is really the most important thing. It's more important than tools, your stack, anything. I could build something with jQuery, but if you have more ownership at the end of the day, you'll have a better overall product, more customer support. You'll care more about your end customer or client. And so I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, and Tim is giving me a hard time on chat, apparently.
So by the way, Steve, my buddy Steve, Commerce Steve in the chat, he's helping to moderate. He said that props to Allan for being a multitasking master. First guest I've seen actually participate in the chat. So you're already demonstrating your skills.
Oh, this is easy mode, man.
This is easy mode. As a piece of cake. You're like, by the way, I'm also coding an MVP right now on the side. It's just no big deal. Building out some microservices. Also, Jasmine Van Giel said, couple of those bootcamp grads watching now. Congrats, Allan.
Is everyone from Demac on the chat right now?
entire company-wide meeting. So Jasmine, another one of your hires.
Yep.
Nice.
Shopify team.
Nice. Let's see here. Alex said the boot camps do a great job of putting out thirsty people who want more than anything to be flexible and be molded so they can learn like everything. So yeah, it sounds like, what you're saying, that boot camps are really putting out people that are thirsty, but it sounds like they're also putting out some people that really aren't that genuinely thirsty, right? If you're hiring really only 1 out of 10 that you interview, and you're probably not interviewing everyone that applies.
No, not everyone. But
and because there are a lot of people that will joke, And I think partly they're just joking, maybe because they're jealous because they had to spend more time learning how to code than 6 months. But I think if you're really focused for 6 months or whatever it is, you can learn a lot. Like I got up to speed with Magento pretty quickly because I was just really focused on it. And but a lot of people will joke like, oh, this boot camp stuff is nonsense. They don't actually know what they're doing after that. And I think that's because there are some people that come out of boot camps that probably aren't really quite there, just in terms of how motivated they are, how genuinely curious they are about coding and building stuff.
They are. Yeah, I mean, as I said, my experience is that a lot of the people that are doing a career switch, they're pivoting, doing something different. They have a much stronger interest in making things work. And you're laughing because you're reading the chat. Jesus Christ.
This chat is fantastic. I'm loving this. Tim said, what he hasn't told you is all the questionable work he's approved. Let's see here. I'm just going to the line. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
Do you think there's a lack of senior Magento dev talent in the marketplace, and it's hard to scale that part because you mentioned having to work a lot overtime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in terms of senior Magento talent, I can't. I think, Kalen, you're better equipped to answer that question than I am. In Canada, or the very least in Toronto, it's hard to find people that have that previous experience. There is not that much that is local, I would say. Me working overtime, it wasn't that much on the development side. It's like as I said, it's like I did the transition to director of engineering, and a lot of what I was dealing with, it was management, not really development. So Tim, you don't get to blame me for that questionable code. Not my fault. So it is different. It's difficult. So Kelly, I don't know if you want to mention anything about.
I mean, so if people are open to fully remote anywhere, there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of talent out there. A lot of the time, you want to hire on site, let's say in Toronto or in a specific city, or even people that are looking to hire remote within the US. I have probably a handful of really solid people. And, you're very quickly getting into the 100,000, 120, 130, 140. So it's, of course, we've placed like 35 people in the last 14, 15 months. So a lot of that, that talent that I'm connected to has been placed. And so there's, there's probably a handful of people within that budget range, which is not cheap at all. And so, that's kind of my take on the current state of finding senior talent. And some of that talent is really more on the M1 side of things still, and hasn't really dove in really deeply into M2. Like we talked about reasons why on the Browze side, they're on M1, and some people for certain reasons have still been on M1. They might be super talented. But some people don't want to touch that because they're like, hey, if you haven't done a year's worth of M2 by now, that's a red flag. I don't want to touch it. So that's kind of where I think, that's at right now.
Okay.
Let's see here. Scrolling down, Keegan Gales, Keegan Galia. I need to wear my glasses. I can hardly read the names from this distance. It's because I have this microphone here now, so I can't just pop my head there and look at it. Thanks for joining, Keegan, man. Good to have you. And Tim's giving you a hard time. Another question from Gentian. Great podcast, Kalen, Allan. Super informative. Do you guys have any suggestions on future and upcoming platforms that agencies should focus on? So you've mentioned Shopify, Work Area, Magento. Unless Gentian might not have been there when you described Work Area in the beginning. But so what's your take overall platforms that agencies should be looking at?
Well, I would say it depends on the agency, right? You have to find what is the right fit for the kind of clients that you're chasing. Like if you're going for larger clients, B2B clients, the answer is going to be different, right? If you're going for B2B, Shopify is obviously not the platform that you want to bring as an agency on board. So it's going to depend on your current skill set the skill set of your current team, as well. What kind of clients you wanna target. The other thing that I would say is right now the space is kind of crazy. There is a lot of different platforms that are coming up. There is like things that I would not necessarily call platforms, like Molten.js, which is a bunch of um, different components for e-commerce, like shopping cart and payments and catalog that you can just grab and plug and play into your own store. So there is definitely that trend of, instead of having the big platform with all the features baked in, you're going to have that modular solution that you can pull different parts into, to build an e-commerce solution. Also, Kalen, by the way, your video feed is right now frozen.
Uh-oh. Okay. I'll take a look at that. Keep talking. I'll work on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Gentian, is that kind of the answer that you were looking for, or is there anything else that I could clarify?
I'm gonna switch over to my feed
Oh my
here,
God.
which is, yeah, I know it's a super weird angle. This is where my laptop is. You're getting to see how the sausage is made here. Sorry about that, guys. I might be able to restart it. I'll try to restart it later, but okay, refocus here. So you talked about some of the different, okay, so I'm curious, you're at Browze. You guys are looking at migration, replat, whatever the heck we're calling it, to M2. And
Sure.
so you guys, this might be a good opportunity for you guys to just go progressive web app, fully headless. You guys are a consumer facing deal. Have you thought about that? Have you looked at that pretty heavily?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are using Magento as the core of the mobile app, the integrations with Shopify, and a couple other stuff. So right now, I'm kind of trying to prioritize the mobile app development. And after that, once we launch and have that more stable, we can talk about what do we do in terms of, do we go to Magento 2? Do we go fully custom? Slowly but surely, the strategies that I want to implement is kind of, and again, this is going to sound horrible, and I'm probably going to get quoted, but I'm trying to box in Magento to be more of the backend rather than the front end or the whole solution, right? So at that point, if we have to replace it, it's just one API that we have to change.
Right.
And we can see you. There we go.
Yeah, I'm back. Yay. No more crazy shot on my chin. The world does not need more of that.
The goatee's coming nicely, by the way.
Goatee's coming in strong, bro. You've been an inspiration for me throughout the years. Finally starting to work on my facial hair game and trying to get up to your level. But so Magento, like you said, powering the back end, and you've got APIs feeding into it. I might have missed what you said about it since I was working on the camera, but what are you thinking about going fully headless PWA?
I don't know enough yet about how Magento 2 is implementing that. I'm planning to catch up with a lot of the, again, I had to miss Imagine this year, so I'm a little behind.
So sad. That's the first one where I didn't see you, man.
It's the first one that I missed, with exception to the first one on LA. I've been to every single one.
Not so cool, man. Not cool.
It is what it is, right?
You're right. So you missed Imagine. Still not too familiar with M2 basically. But what do you think about progressive? So are you responsible for front end and back end at Browze?
Yeah, right now I am, which I'm expecting a comment coming from Alex in like 5 minutes about me in the front end.
He's going to say good luck or something like that.
Yeah, he's just going to give me a hard time. Yeah, I mean, so it will be, it's interesting. I'm slowly hiring, I'm building a smaller team of developers that I'm going to, hey, you're going to be design, you're going to be front end, you're going to be in charge of the APIs, you're going to be in charge of the mobile app, right? So rather than going into the massive, let's just hire a bunch of people, the strategy that I'm implementing at Browze is building a small but senior and experienced team of developers that I can just start handing off the different applications of the different projects that we're building internally. So
you still need to hire a front end lead then, basically.
Yeah, I still need to hire a front end lead. I still need to hire a designer. Like the design could use some lob, some redesign, for lack of a better term. But we'll get there.
Nice. And then you'll be leaning on probably that front end lead to help you figure out progressive web app, figure out what your front end stack will look like.
Yeah, I might go React for the front end.
Hey, shout out. Nice. Let's see what else we got here. So Tim said, just a side note, working with Allan changed how I work on the daily. Watching him change and grow between his roles was always inspiring. I think he became my mentor. Aw, dang,
Oh,
Allan, you got some real love from the people here, man. Not
yeah,
only
bro.
are you the first person to multitask on chat, but you're first person to get such heartfelt love on the podcast here.
Apparently, I did some things right.
Let's see here. Mark Lewis, how, if any, has your development workflow changed moving from an agency to a merchant? That's an interesting question because agency, you got multiple clients all firing at the same time. Merchant, you've got basically probably one code base ish, but how has that changed for you?
I wouldn't say that has changed that much right now. Still using feature branches, bug fix branches, so essentially topic branches, Git flow, code reviews, automatic deployments. Uh, it really hasn't changed that much. The biggest change for me right now is that I'm also playing the kind of operations manager. So I'm trying to work with the CEO, which is, hey, no, let's try this thing, or let's try that thing, or let's do this, or have we finished that, and trying to prioritize and organize that. So I'm definitely feeling the pain and relating a bit more to the account managers and project managers that I might or might have not given a hard time while I was at Demac. So I'm kind of starting to feel that pain.
Right.
So that would be the biggest change. Other than that, is like it really doesn't change that much.
Got it. So you haven't started using MAMP or anything crazy like that?
Oh no,
You're a Docker guy?
Yeah, we're not using Docker right now. We're actually using VirtualBox. There is actually shout out to Demac. If you guys go check their GitHub account, there is a very good VirtualBox for Magento development that is out there that they haven't actually publicized a lot, but it's a very, very good environment for doing Magento and Magento 2 development.
Nice, nice. More love from Tim. Previous companies never had an individual that fulfilled career growth as much as Allan. I'd recommend all agencies, regardless of platform, have an individual similar skill sets as Allan.
Oh,
What are those skill sets that he's talking about though? Like as far as the different skill sets you've had, changing roles, like what do you feel are your core skill sets?
look, I'm core. I'm a technical guy. I love programming. I love development. I love learning new technology. Like, hey, challenge become a CTO. Browze is here's our Ionic app. Here's TypeScript. Here's all those technologies that I'm not familiar with. Go learn them. And I'm up to the point where I'm feeling comfortable developing mobile apps in about a month. The biggest change in skill sets that I had at my time at DMAC was actually having to become a manager and having to deal with people, right? So I was used to being the opinionated asshole developer, and you really don't get far with dealing with people when you have that attitude, right? So you have to be a little bit more friendly and having to learning how to deal with people, doing one-on-ones, escalating problems, and a lot of the model that I have for talking with people or talking with clients, I owe that to Matt Bertulli. Like I copy a lot of the ways that I saw him dealing with both with people and with clients. So a lot of the mannerisms and a lot of the way that I express myself comes from trying to imitate in that point, my mentor. So it's an interesting change. It's like before this is like when I came to Canada, my English level and my confidence of talking with people wasn't there so
Right.
I had to learn that, especially now when, hey, here's 40 people, good luck.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And Tim said, pro tip, always bust your boss's chops. But I mean, it's funny because I always feel like like we're talking about DMAC and stuff, and you can be a little bit nervous, like, oh, I don't want to say anything negative or whatever. And we talked about different topics, but I always feel like when you're transparent, like it's like no press is bad press. Like it ends up reflecting positively. And I feel like, the stuff you're saying, the stuff that people are saying about having worked with you, what you're saying about Matt, like, I feel like it's showing what a great place to work DMAC is. And so
It is. It's nothing but love to the team over there. It's like there is an amazing team of people, and I'm sure they're gonna thrive and they're gonna do amazing. even if they miss their, they no longer have their best Magento developer. And I'm only saying this because the actual best Magento developer of Demac just joined the chat.
Oh, nice. That's Michael Kreitzer. Hey,
Yeah.
Michael, thanks for joining. If you have any questions, or more importantly, if there's any specific way you can bust Allan's chops here in the live chat, please do. We're trying to give him a thorough roasting. So let's see. Were there any other topics that we wanted to get to? I know we're a little over our time, but I'm good to go a bit longer.
I can go a bit longer if you want. Cool. But do we have anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, I know we talked about cannabis, hiring juniors, boot camps, Demac, Browze.
Yeah. So let's pose the question to the channel, and while they come up with questions or any interesting topic of discussion, I have a very important question for you.
Okay, please do.
So now it's my turn. It's like Mage Titans Costa Rica. When is that happening?
Hey, Mage Titans Costa Rica. Man, we should really do that because we need to have some Mage Titans in some cool places, man.
We need some Magento people at the beach.
Yeah, we do. Why don't we ever go to the beach? What's the matter with us? Yeah, I put that out on Twitter a month or so ago, and got a bunch of responses. There was like 10 people that were ready to go, so we could get like an Airbnb and just go for it. So we might do that. Organizing events is so hard. It's definitely not my strength at all. But shoot, you never know. I was talking to Philip Jackson about it, and he was like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. Or what if we do it in South Florida instead? And I was like, okay, that could be cool. There's some cool places. Get beachside Miami or something like that.
Yeah.
Might be easier for some people to get to. I don't know.
I'm game.
You're down.
Make it happen.
All right. Michael said, trying to keep up with Allan is literally how I got where I am today. That's
not true, but thank you.
Nice. Well, hey, thanks everybody for joining. Really fun to get all the questions and stuff. Really makes this fun. And if there's anything else, feel free to pop it in. But Allan, thanks for joining. Anything you want to point people to connect with you? Anything you want to plug? I know you're doing some hiring at Browze. Anything you want to plug? Or mention?
Just hit me on Twitter. I'm right now looking to hire front-end and back-end developers as well. Do please visit browze.com. Follow me on Twitter.
And then how do you spell browze.com?
It's just like you spell browser, but it's a set instead of. And again, I'm gonna post it on the channel because this is one of the fun parts of my accent that.
It's a Z, right? BROWZE.
Yeah. But okay. Again, the accent doesn't come very clearly, so. Oh God, yeah. Time to close the stream. Marcus is here.
Marcus Tan said, "Dun dun dun." Who's Marcus? Another buddy?
Another developer at Demac, a personality if there is one.
Oh, yeah, he's a character. Right. Well, we always have room for characters here on the live stream, Marcus. So hit me up. Mark Lewis said, Southern Florida is like Costa Rica with better internet. So we do need to have good internet for any Mage Titans that we do. So yeah. That's definitely something to keep in mind. Well, cool. So people can check out browze.com. I don't think you put it in the chat, but you said you were gonna.
I did.
Okay, I'm blind. Well, hey everybody, thanks for joining. We will be doing a live stream tomorrow with Jason Cochran, head of engineering for Magento Marketplace, as well as Yissi Rietsema out in the Netherlands with extension company called Urio. He's also, I think, the head of the Magento Association, and he's put on some interesting conferences on Reacticon and Mage Test Fest and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking extension marketplace stuff from the community perspective, also from the Magento perspective. So if you want to come give anybody a grilling, that should be a good time. And that's about it, you guys. So I am going to hit stop here. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you soon.